And so I lead a really simple existence. I drive 1.3 miles to work every day. Sometimes I walk. I go home, I cook dinner, hang out with my kids, and so I'm not real interesting in the globetrotting sense, but in the who are you and what do you do? I try to love really hyper local people. I always tell our church we're a hyper local church, um, and that we got one zip code. That's all. I mean, that's about what we reach. And if we do that really well, we did our job. And so that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of what I'm chasing, trying to be smaller in the world. That's kind of the mantra I live by: is smaller and slower and lesser and lower. And I think that's the Jesus life. But I don't, I might change my mind.
Smaller and slower and lesser and lower.
Yeah, that's just it. Just runs through my head all day. How do I get smaller? He must become greater. I must become lesser. Um, Lower is a posture. I'm not lording over anything. I got to be lower, washing feet kind of thing. What's the one I'm missing? Slower. Jesus was a 2 mile an hour ministry. He didn't have Uber. He didn't get on a plane. He was a 2 mile an hour ministry. And you and I, when we were in Israel together, you see it and you go, oh, okay. Well, he's in the backwoods, nowhere. Like he's not even in the important places in the nowhere villages. He's in the nowhere villages and the back alleys of the nowhere villages. So I'm like, I could go slower, and maybe I find more Jesus there.
That's interesting because that's clearly a countercultural. I think it's countercultural posture
Hmm.
than what we see, what we've been taught. Right? Go into all the world and make disciples, and that becomes. I mean, I'm not disregarding the great, you know, commission, but if we're not careful, that becomes our motivation. And it's not the Great Commission that becomes our motivation, it's the influence we have over the world.
Hmm.
I want to make a significant, huge change. I want to be written down in the history books. I've done that in 30 years. I've done that. I still struggle with that, even with this Authentic Pastor Project. I have to be careful that I don't think, well, I want to make a huge change that changes pastors' lives, that changes the church, that changes the world. And I can be very guilty of that. I've done that in my youth ministry work. I'm really quick to say I've spoken X amount of countries. You see how I didn't do that right there? I just put an X instead of like the real number. Because I want to impress you. I put that in my bio. I say that in intros to podcasts. And why do I do that? I do that because I want you to think I am somebody.
Hmm.
Because maybe I'm not comfortable with the somebody I am.